No, before we do that, before we play this clip, I got a text from a fellow named Matt Steichen, and he said that our mutual friend Dick Cohn took you to go meet Bob Dylan once. Let's hear that story.
Yeah, it was a wild way that it happened. The St. Paul Saints contacted me and said, yeah, we heard that you know some guys who know Dylan, and Mike Veck, the owner, his birthday's coming up, and we wanted to ask if you could arrange for Mike to meet Dylan. And I said, yeah, Bob Dylan, Meryl Streep has tried to meet Bob Dylan. Raquel Welch has tried to meet Bob Dylan. A lot of people try to meet. You don't just meet Bob Dylan. I said, there's no way in hell, A, that it's going to happen, and B, that I'm even the right person to be talking to. You know, at the time, Larry Kegan, Bob Dylan's best friend, was alive, and he was a friend of mine as well, and I know a friend of yours. And the thinking was you just call up Larry, and Larry arranges for Dylan to meet Mike Beck, say happy birthday, and we all go merrily on. And they said, well, I know you're saying it's impossible, but you haven't even asked these Dylan guys, so would you please ask them for us? And I said, to myself, my God, the nerve of these people. Yeah, I'll call right now, get right back to you. So I hung up. I called Larry Kegan, and I said, Larry, let's just get this over with real quickly. I'm going to ask you one question. You say no, I'll hang up, and I'll be able to pass that on to the folks at the St. Paul Saints offices. Is there any way that Mike Beck, the owner of the St. Paul Saints, could meet Bob Dylan? And Larry says, Tom, let me think about this a moment. And I said, Larry, no, let's get this over with. Say no, and I'll call him and we'll move on. And he goes, no, my mind's going right now. I got some ideas. And what was going through Larry's head, unbeknownst to me, was possibly, and this is amazing that his mind worked this way, possibly setting up a minor league stadium tour for Bob Dylan musically to travel the country and perform. And Mike Veck would be a good person to start with because he owned multiple teams.
Right.
And so Larry's thinking like a businessman, like Bob's agent. And I'm shocked that this is even being mulled over. He ends up calling me back an hour later. He said, here's the deal. Bob's going to be playing in Rochester, Minnesota. There will be a letter in his dressing room. The letter may or may not be opened. If it is opened, he may or may not want to do what I've asked him to do, but I'm going to ask him to meet with you guys. So you take Mike Veck down there, and Dick Cohn went with, obviously, a guy who had grown up with Dylan, been to Herzl Camp with Dylan, been at the U of M with Dylan. But Larry was the man who made it happen, and Larry was probably the only one that could ever have gotten to Bob. And the story became, go down there for the sound check. You'll either find out Bob opened it and agreed and called you back, or he didn't. So we're sitting there for the sound check. Guy comes walking out and said, you guys, now, right now. And we raced backstage before the concert. I was ahead of everybody because I just thought this is going to be the best moment of my existence.
Right.
Bob comes up to me, shakes my hand. You the baseball guy? Of course, I had to say, no, I'm just some guy who shouldn't even be here, frankly. I shook hands with him, and then I said, no, the baseball guy is right behind me here. Introduced him to Mike Veck. Dick was there, of course. Val gave him a big hug, Dick's wife, and we sat and chatted for a while. And it was the weirdest thing. I listened to Bob Dylan say these words, and it's like the most banal quote in history, but to me, it was just dumbfounding. He said, Midway Stadium. So if I'm driving up University Avenue, I get to Snelling and I go north, how far before I hit the stadium? And I'm going, it's like the hardware store owner in my neighborhood or something. He's getting down to the blocks and the streets. He's got it all down.
You know what, Tommy? Did you tell him? But if you get to 56th and Wabasha, you've gone too far.
Oh man, it was wild. And and then I think it was Dick said, hey, and Bob, I think you should sing the national anthem at the game. And Bob starts laughing. But what threw me is, I'd say at the time when I met Bob Dylan, I had probably seen him in a video or a picture smiling and laughing maybe 3 times in his entire existence.
Right.
I just didn't expect happy, convivial, gregarious Bob. But that's what we got. Just almost bubbly. I almost want to go with that. It was quite astounding to me.
Wow. Well, that's something. That's something to tell your grandkids.
Yeah. It was. You know, I don't know if you have this experience, but I've always been sort of mesmerized by the way through the years Bob Dylan changes, where you can't even see the old Bob Dylan in the new face, and then like the 80s face you can't see anymore in the 2000s face, and like more than almost any other performer, his looks morph, and like he seems to be different people. Well, when I was standing there backstage, the face I was looking at was 1966 Bob Dylan with some wrinkles. It's just amazing how much in person he was exactly that kid, that 20-some-year-old, just with wrinkles. Like, it went right back to that. I didn't see the blood on the track's face or the face from, when he was doing Oh Mercy, or when he was Time Out of Mind tour, when he was acting in these different films. It was like the kid from Hibbing.
You know what?